If you've got hip-hop questions, I've got hip-hop answers. Email me right now at d.podcast@gmail.com. That's d.podcast@gmail.com. And I also want to remind you guys that you have about a week to submit your submissions for the rap contest. I've gotten quite a few submissions, and I just want to ask you guys to upload them to YouTube before you email it to me. I've mostly been getting email submissions and not tweets or Facebook things. So please, you've been forcing me to fucking download these things. I don't want to, because a lot of times I'm on the go and maybe I'd like to listen to it right there when you send it to me. So I'd like to click the link and listen to it. And plus, I don't want to have to download something in order to listen to it. So just please give me the link and we can keep it going from there. So you have about a week left to make your submissions. Make them good, and remember, the winner gets a choice of their request video, or they get an interview by yours truly via Skype. So this week's question comes from Diggum Lewis. Diggum wants to know, Diggum says, I've got a hip-hop related question for you. What do you think about Eminem's latest project, Shady XV? I'm curious to know what you think about it. I myself picked it up about 2 days ago, and I'm taking it all in. Thanks for everything. Keep creating. Thank you for the email, Diggum, and I'm wondering whether that's your name or if you're just fucking with me. It's a pretty cool name if it is your name. This actually came at a good time because I honestly do not want to write about Eminem for at least 6 months. I've made videos about Eminem several times this year, and I can talk about Eminem, but I just don't want to write about him anymore. You guys obviously know why. It's for several reasons. God, Eminem's been around forever. He is pretty much one of the only artists. If we want to consider the rotation of artists who are normally spoken about on this channel, Eminem is clearly the oldest in terms of how long he's been in the industry and age. Not making too many videos about Jay-Z, folks. I'm not making too many videos about Nas. But I am making videos about a guy who's been in here since 9/6. Most people have formulated their opinion about Eminem. And, the intrigue of our relationship, I would like to think, is shedding opinions on people who are basically new, who are fresh, who come out into the scene and do different creative things, and people would like to to hear what people have to say about them. There's not much to say about Eminem. The Shady XV, it's a compilation, so we can't hold Eminem accountable for a couple tracks that somebody needs to be held accountable for, like Yellow Wolves Down and Bane by D12. Somebody's got to do hours of community service for that shit. Eminem has to be given credit for having the foresight of putting a group like Slaughterhouse on his roster. Credit for two reasons. First of all, they're an amazing group. Second of all, a lot of people would be intimidated to put 4 people like that on their label. Why? Because people talk. And if you're somebody like Eminem, your fans are people who pride themselves on knowing about lyrics, on following people for their lyricism. Once you start to put out shitty products, people immediately start to say things like, he's not even the best rapper on his label anymore. This is a game of egos. And for somebody like Eminem to feature artists like them on his projects and to feature on their albums speaks volumes about him, especially in this climate where, people basically think he's fallen off. I tend to think, and this is just a theory, that it's not because of because of the fact that he's sober. It's not because of the fact that he's simply fallen off. I think this has to be interesting for him. He's got to have some skin in the game. And the only way to make this interesting for him, to remain interesting for him, is to experiment, to play around with different deliveries and different approaches. That's simply what I think he's doing here. if you listen to the title track, Shady XV, it's almost done to a fault. You know, how Eminem just compounds all those words into bars. It's done to a fault on that track. And it's also done to a fault on Vegas. And by the way, Royce does something on that track that he almost never does when he features with Eminem. And it sounds like Royce is trying to keep up with M. Royce normally sounds like he's confident. He's totally secure about being on a track with Eminem and not being outshined. He's one of the only people that can do that. He never did that once on Bad Meets Evil. And that was a complete album. But he seemed to do it on that track. Verse seemed rushed. I'm not sure how, Royce does his verses, if he always does them just minutes before he steps inside the booth, but it sounded very rushed. But on that track, M did it to a fault, just like with the Shady XV. But then on the other hand, you have Right For Me, which is in the back end of the album. And right there, it's done with the exact balance that's needed. I mean, it's pretty obvious that this man has been given credit to being one of the most creative people within this culture, one of the most technically sound people within this genre. So with that comes the fact that he knows that expectations are very high. Might he overcompensate? Yeah, that probably happens. But that's only because that's what we ask of him. We ask him to walk through hell in gasoline drawers. Drawers or draws? I said drawers. We ask him to do that every album. And every album, it seems like he disappoints. Because he clearly just can't be the person that he once was. Even though we'd like him to stay fresh, but still be that same person that he was back in 96. It's very unreasonable. But at the same time, if anyone is capable of it from a technical standpoint, now, from a song-making standpoint, he's never been the best, and we've always known that. We've always known that his hooks were never the best. And we've known for about 4 to 5 years that his beat selection has been terrible. But from a technical standpoint, you don't get any better than Eminem. So if anyone could do it, it's him. Detroit vs. Everybody was dope. And I love the fact that Danny Brown got some love. Finally, Danny Brown is getting some form of recognition from the higher ups, if I can say that, quote unquote, from the higher ups of hip hop, Even if he's on a track with Big Sean, that's okay. And Big Sean on that track, by the way, I got to give him some credit. And I gave him some credit on The Control. I gave him some credit, and I said that his verse was decent on that song. And a lot of people told me to shut the fuck up because it's Big Sean. But you could tell from his punch-ins that he put some effort into this verse. Maybe because he was aware that he was going to get a lot of backlash that he got from his Control record. It could be. Maybe there's some artistic integrity within Big Sean's head. Go figure, right? Overall, I want to say that I was happy with Shady XV. With exception to fucking Down, with exception to Bane, with exception to Vegas, with exception to with the song with the Twister song. Sorry, not the Twister, the Twisted record. And that's pretty much all I have to say. If you got hip-hop questions, I've got hip-hop answers. So email me right now at d.podcast@gmail.com. That's d.podcast@gmail.com. And I will see you freaks next week.